So guys, this is more of like a discussion video, more of like some an observation I made. Really, this is something that's been going on the last like few years. But as the title says, like, why do people dislike legendaries in battle? Um, and I think it comes from, and when I, some of the things I'm going to say in here is going to probably offend some people because it's a more realistic viewpoint. And the number one thing is like why a lot of people hate legendaries in battle is because it's more so a lack of competitive understanding. And when I say that is because like the term legendary is not a competitive term. It's not. Legendary is a status regarded in game in regards to the actual playthrough of the game. Because like when I see people say, "Hey man, they use legendaries, they're cheap, they don't know what they're doing, like they're trash." I mean, like, okay. And then my usual response is, "What about Cosmog?" And I usually either don't get a response or I hear people actually do say, "Yeah, Cosmog's broken too." And I'm like, "No, that's just not true." And the thing is, like, people regard legendary as like this. They hear the term legendary in game and they try to translate that over to competitive, which is just not the case because there are some legendaries who are pretty much on par with like your basic like fully evolved Pokemon. And that's just the hard truth. Like, legendary does not mean like, oh yeah, this thing's super strong in battle. Like, no, that's not the case. Because when you think about it like this, like there's some normal mons who are better than some legendaries, and there's some legendaries who are worse than normal ones. Like, look at like was it Uxie, Mesprit, and Uzev? No one really is sitting here saying like these things are broken. But then you have stuff like Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, which are like on a higher tier, which are like really, really strong. And it's like they have a lot of base stats, but like this whole thing of like just blanket, oh, legendaries are broken is just like a very flawed argument. Or like, oh, he's using legendaries, he must be cheap, he's trash. They're very flawed arguments. And the thing is like I see a lot of people they take pride in this, like, oh yeah, I beat like a team full of legendaries on casual battles, and I'm like, you more than likely you beat a child, in all honesty, because the thing is like there's a reason why some like uber legendaries, which are like the box legendaries, like the ones that are really really strong, are actually banned in competitive like Smogon or just like in basic standard VGC because these are ones that are actually can just single-handedly warp the dimensions of a game. Like a lot of people don't seem to understand that. So it's just like I said, I mean, I used to be the same way. Before I started playing competitively a lot more, it was like I was like, man, like people using legendaries, they don't know what they're doing. And then when I started understanding competitive mods a lot better, I'm like, yeah, some of these just really aren't that good. Because again, like I mean, if somebody had a team full of like six Cosmogs, I use Cosmog as the perfect example, and they just like six would them, like Yuri, are you gonna brag about that? Because the thing is, like, they're not that great of mons, but if you got destroyed by somebody with six Dialgas, oh no, like they're using legendaries, they're trash, they have no skill. And I'm just like, it just doesn't make any sense because it's just more so like a flawed argument more than anything because it just shows a general lack of like general competitive understanding because if you're making the argument like, oh yeah, all legendaries are broken, or anyone that uses legendaries are skillless, it just shows your lack of really just competitive aptitude. Because things like world champions have like legendaries on their team that are allowed within that format, and like no one's sitting there calling them like broke, like not broken, but skillless and like cheap or anything like that because they're playing within the rules of the format. And like a lot of times I see people they're complaining about battling legendaries and stuff like that, and like they're playing in it's spamming my chat, and they're playing in like casual. And I'm like, casual, there's not really any rules to what people can bring, so people will bring any and everything available. And even in ranked, I mean, people are upset about like ranked bringing one restricted mod. It's within the rules. People are playing within the rules. It's like, what's the point in being upset about people playing within the rules? No one is forcing you to play, to battle. And like I said, I understand being frustrated, but I think a lot of people just don't, they don't look at it through like logic. They go more so off of like emotion, and that's what I think kind of like blurs that whole line and kind of like muddies the argument and stuff like that, because it just makes no sense. And like I do hear some people say sometimes like, oh yeah, well, they're using stuff that can't be bred. I'm like, so like what does that matter that like they can't be bred? Like, yeah, I use my hard earned stuff that I bred and all this other stuff, and like I lost to them, and I'm like, so like people don't realize like a lot of that stuff just really in the grand scheme of things just doesn't matter. Whether or not you bred something has no weight in competitive. And I think a lot of people need to really start to kind of understand that, because it really doesn't. It's really, legendary is just like an arbitrary term that means nothing. It truly means nothing in terms of competitive, because you have things that are just different. Even outside of legendaries, I mean, like a Cinderace compared to a Caterpie is a whole nother class of mon. But then a Cinderace compared to like a Cosmog is like a whole nother class of mon. But then you got Dialga compared to like a Cinderace. Dialga basically outclasses it. But then you've got stuff like Landorus, and I'll probably make a different video on that, like about Landorus, because that one really frustrates people. But yeah, it's just more so just a general just lack of understanding that a lot of people have. Like they see legendaries, and it's just like it more so comes from just a lack of competitive understanding. There's really no other reason to it, because if you're actually playing competitive, and I'm not trying to like gatekeep or anything, if you're actually playing competitive and you're really frustrated about legendaries, you're not thinking competitively. You're thinking in terms of the in-game lore. Like that's just the basic thing. You're thinking in terms of in-game lore when it comes to legendaries, because it's an arbitrary term when it comes to competitive. Like there's no tier in like that's why you see like in VGC restricted mons. They don't just say, oh, legendaries are banned. And I hear people say that all the time. They're like, yeah, VGC is allowing one legendary, and I'm like, there's been legendaries allowed like the entire time. It's just they have some mons are just restricted. It's just more so you kind of can see where someone's at competitively and like their overall general knowledge in the sphere, and like that's just how things are. I mean, again, like I'm not sitting here trying to like ridicule anybody. I'm just speaking more so as an observation and just like the straight facts about the whole thing. But I mean, you don't have to agree with me. I mean, I'm making a pretty sound argument. You don't have to agree with me. If you do disagree with me and think I'm completely wrong, I'm full of it. I mean, as I've done previous times, I mean, I am more than welcome to. I mean, we can discuss it in a call, just discuss our different viewpoints, and we can both try to see each other's point of view. I mean, we can do that live or behind the scenes or whatever. I mean, I have no issue discussing the whole matter with anyone who is willing to have a discussion and not an argument. That's the difference. Actual reasonable discussion. You present your points. We go back and forth, kind of dissecting each other's points, and no one's like mudslinging. No one's like name calling, anything else like that. But again, that's all I gotta say. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you agree, if you disagree. I mean, hey, I read most of the comments all the time, but let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later.